Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jai Shri Krishna Sab Vaishnav. Today is day 74 and Varta 53 within the stories of the 252 Vaishnava Vartavs, let's say biographies of Sri Gosaiji. Varta 53 is the story of one Rajput Garasya from Kanti. This is a devotee of tamas disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Kelani, who belongs to the Pulindi group. She manifests from Mana Aturi and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. Kelani has one Sakhi named Rama, who became the Rajput's wife. He was born into this Rajput Garasya family in a village named Kante on the banks of the Mahi River. His father was a tax collector for the local king. When he reached 18, his father died, and the king gave him his father's job, and he also collected taxes. Part 1. Once when Sri Gosaiji was travelling, he set up camp outside one village. The Rajput was responsible to the king of that area for collecting taxes in that village according to the king's rules. When he saw Sri Gosaiji, he perceived him as the Supreme Lord himself. He approached Sri Gosaiji, bowed down to him and said, "O great Maharaj, I am a most offensive and fallen individual. I make people suffer by demanding tax from them. Now please hear my plea. I am your servant. Therefore you have graced me by letting me see you. Please now accept me as your disciple. I would be the servant of your servants." Sri Gosaiji replied, "But you force people to pay taxes." The Rajput supplicated, "From now on I will not take taxes. Please just accept me as your disciple. And now please come to this your servant's village." Seeing the humility of the Rajput, Sri Gosaiji initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandha. The Rajput bowed down again and said, "O great Maharaj, please tell me what to do, into which I will be able to apply my heart." Sri Gosaiji presented him with one Swarupa of child Krishna and the print of his 2 feet made with sacred red powder on cloth. The Rajput applied himself enthusiastically into very loving Seva. All of his family members became disciples of Sri Gosaiji, and he taught them all the ways of Seva and the principles of the path of grace. Sri Gosaiji was setting off from that place, and the Rajput made substantial donations to him. The Rajput accompanied him for a short distance and then supplicated, "Please do grant us your sight again soon." Sri Gosaiji arrived in Gokul after some more days. Part 2. One day, when Sri Gosaiji was cleaning his teeth, a piece of popped barley came out. At that moment, Chacha Harivamsa was standing close by. He asked Sri Gosaiji, "What is that, sire?" Sri Gosaiji replied, "In one particular place there lives one Rajput. He had made offerings of popped barley grain." Chacha asked him, "Oh Maharaj, what kind of offering is that which gets stuck in the teeth?" Sri Gosaiji advised him to go to that village and see for himself. Chachaji left Gokul and arrived in that village after a few days. The Rajput found out that Sri Gosaiji's vessel of grace, an accomplished Vaishnava Chacha Harivamsa had arrived. He brought him to his house and respectfully made him very comfortable. He went and stood before him with folded hands and supplicated, "It is my great fortune you have come here." Chachaji asked of him, "What time is it in your Sri Thakurji's Seva?" He replied that the Rajbog offerings had been made. Chachaji asked him what he had cooked and offered. He replied that his wife had done the cooking and suggested that he come to see. He added that the cooking had been done according to the rules of the path of grace. Harivamsa entered the temple and pulled the curtain back slightly. The Rajput also had a look. They observed that Sri Thakurji was having to stretch his arms out to get to the plate because it was placed too far away from him. Wearing his outside clothes, the Rajput immediately entered the temple and pushed it closer towards him. Seeing this, Chacha Harivamsa kept quiet. Later, when they accepted back the offerings as prasad, they invited Chachaji to partake of the Mahaprasad. Chachaji replied that he would prefer to do his own cooking and eat that prasad because the Rajput had flouted the rules of Seva by entering into the temple with outside clothes on and without washing his hands, and then pulled the table back. The Rajput brought Chachaji all the necessary supplies for his cooking. The Rajput told him that they would only partake of prasad when he was also ready to partake. Chachaji bathed and began to cook. When he had completed his seva, they all enjoyed the Mahaprasad. Then Chachaji asked the Rajput, "On one particular day, what did you offer to your Sri Thakurji?" He named the month and date. On that day you had offered more than normal?" The Rajput answered, "Yes, on that day we offered popped barley grain." Chachaji just kept quiet, took his leave from the Rajput and started out. The Rajput asked him to convey his prostrations and also sent donations with him to give to Sri Gosaiji and Sri Govardhanaji. He also sent off Chachaji with great respect. Chachaji reached Gokul in a few days' time. He went to have Sri Gosaji's sight in his bertuk, where he bowed down to him. He handed over the Rajput's donation to the store manager and handed over the donation for Sri Govardhan Nathji separately and conveyed his prostration. Sri Gosaji asked Chacha Harimamsji, "Did you see that Rajput Vaishnava?" He replied that he had, but that he had not wanted to accept the Mahaprasad of his house because his etiquette was lacking. Sri Gosaiji told him, "If you went to his house just to judge his etiquette, then that is all you would have seen. Did you not observe anything else? You would not have witnessed his loving mood as a parent towards Sri Krishna. All you saw was his manners. In my opinion, it is the love within a Vaishnava that I look for, along with the humility of heart. What do we have to gain by that? By just judging their behaviour?" Bhav Prakash. This story tells us that in the path of grace, the Lord does not look so much at an embodied soul's actions as at their love which captivates him. Actions are not as important as the love. In the path of grace, the Lord uplifts an embodied soul through his power of supreme grace. Sri Gosaiji has written in his Navavigapti, "O my dear Lord of Vraj, if you require your devotee to have some spiritual practice before granting the blessing of the touch of your lotus feet, then this will be a sad situation, for I am an insignificant soul with no such appropriate behaviour by which I might attain you. Therefore the love within a Vaishnava's heart is of the highest importance. No action bears fruit if it is not done with love. In this world, a Vaishnava should have a feeling of belonging with another Vaishnava and see only their loving attentiveness. Here the Vaishnava entered the temple and touched Sri Thakurji's table whilst wearing his outside clothes. However, Sri Govardhan Nathji lovingly accepted that offering. He did not take heed of this so-called breaking of the rules. On this subject, the accomplished Vaishnav Surdasji has sung a very significant pad. Rag Vihag. Worship this love-filled Lord with the devotional sentiments of the Vraja Gopis. You might make many efforts to reach him in other ways, but he will not accept them as Seva. The 16,000 fire sages asked how they might lovingly meet the Lord. Then they appeared as the Gopis in Vraj and, dropping their manhood, developed the female devotional mood, superior in Vraj and opposite to the scriptural laws. The disarray of their clothes and ornaments when they ran out to meet their beloved was due to their overwhelming devotion. Opposed to Vedic rules it may have been, but for a letter to print correctly, its typeset is backwards. The injunctions of the Vedas stand as nothing where love rules. The poet Surdasji says this is how those sweet-natured and clever gopis were able to captivate Sri Krishna the enchanter. Therefore, one should not just look at a Vaishnava's outer actions. Know this attitude to be Sri Nathji's grace. This is how Sri Gosaiji made Harimamsji understand this point. Thus concludes Varta 53, the story of the Rajput who is the recipient of Sri Gosaji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava, whom Sri Gosaiji profusely praised. Sri Thakurji himself granted him his direct experience. In this way, there is truly no end to this tale.